I think it's important for the history of the Black Theatre Workshop, its beginnings, and for the history and of theatre, Black theatre in Montreal, and be clearly understood that 20,000 West Indians didn't just arrive in Montreal in between 1960 and 1965 and just brought theatre a la Caribbean with them. There was theatre in Montreal, in the Black community prior to that. And again, the principal leadership in that respect was one person by the name of Victor Philip. At least, let me put it this way, he is the person that we interfaced with. But there were people before that interested and pursuing theatre as a form of Black expression. You might say that the concerns of the individuals, both artists and leadership that created the Trinidad and Tobago Drama Committee, their concern was to really, even if they didn't really clearly understand it, then was to recreate themselves within an environment, to recreate what a culture that they had been comfortable with and accustomed to, and through which they have expressed themselves for, in most instances, between 25 and 40 years before they arrived in Canada and in Montreal in this case. And one of the demands that came out of the discussion and the debate that took place in the community is that if we are going to do theatre, if we are, that it's going to have to be a theatre that's relevant to our lives in Canada and in Montreal, but it will not abandon, we will use what we brought to express it. And so there was, in many instances, for instance, the first very important and interesting and attractive and appealing productions that we did were two pieces by Johnny Cayon, who's now dead, unfortunately, called Calypso in the Flesh and Fact and Fancy. And these two, he called them calypsoperas, and what it was essentially is to take calypsos and use them to tell a story, and to drive in the principal elements of music and dance. Naturally, and what he did at the end is everything was always end up in mass, as you say. Everything end up in a big festival and a dance in the street. So his calypso operas will always end in a huge, massive display of costumes, dance, and different kinds of mythical characters created out of the mass culture, so to speak. So that was really, in large measure, nostalgic. Then we begin where we broke, and that was essentially where the Trinidad and Tobago Drama Committee went. In becoming the Black Theatre Workshop, it dropped the nostalgia. When we did How No Black Man was not, as the author Laurence Elias put it, essentially trying to talk about black and white. It was trying to talk about being and how Western civilization and capitalism, in a sense, has altered the entire artistic and the mosaic of man as coming from clay. But he used Africa as the basis, and looked at African culture, movement, dance against European dance, for instance, the whites. It's the way it is, the way people think in a highly high technology society versus the way people think in a rural and more sort of, the way people live closer to the earth and the fish and the fowl and the beast, if you want to put it in those kinds of ways. So that made a leap out of the local nostalgic into the larger, but without dropping. Of course, today we are doing things like Black Stone Bowl and or Lost Heroes, and we are doing, what's her name, Swan Song, the Swan Song of Maria, which is addressing, but all from a point of view of how do we as a people see the different things that the human species go through. Have we conquered or not conquered? How do we feel about it? What do we have to offer anybody in terms of our experiences extended to us for hundreds of years from our ancestors to the present, me sitting here and talking to you. So it's important for that we understand how that transition took place.